listening to K-Love. Now, Brian Urlacher has Click and Easy Hair Restore. But where are all the things about Halloween? Like, there's none of these billboards. You have Uber Eats, Illuminati's, and you have these other billboards. And I don't understand on these billboards. You have Harvest Ministry, which is on 53, Route 53, and they don't have a digital sign telling when the services are, truly, or telling what's going on with the church, but it's right off of Interstate or Route 53, which is really turns into, I think, 290. So the whole point is they don't have a billboard, but I don't see anything about Halloween. How about Tao, the nightclub in Chicago? This big billboard has Uber Eats on it, but how about Tao, the nightclub, advertising when it's going to have its Halloween parties? You know, these nightclubs can advertise that this is Bona Beef, Uber Eats, and then you have traditional furniture stores and that. But on these, you don't have any, like Northwestern Football did have a one billboard, but the billboard didn't lay out when the games were at home. So they didn't lay out the games at home, and they didn't lay out when to get tickets and how to get tickets, but it did say Northwestern Football. And then you have here the Grand Victoria in Elgin, but why would you have it going into the city? Shouldn't that be on the other side, going outward, and just say, 10 more miles to the Grand Victoria? Maybe don't stop at home, continue on to the Grand Victoria. But why are they getting people that are going into the city? You want to get people that go out from the city, right? People that live in the suburbs are more likely to go to Grand Victoria. So here, Love My Additions, Air Room, so architect and builders. Okay. But architect and builders. So thinking of a remodeling project, Air Room. If you're thinking of remodeling, think of Air Room. People remodeling. Think of building a house. Think of, something that you would use them for. Got an upcoming commercial construction project. Like at Waltz Brothers, we redid the offices. Thinking about remodeling your business's offices or your business manufacturing floor? Contact us. Architects can get into redoing manufacturing floors, but they don't. Waltz Brothers, why aren't there any architects who design manufacturing floors? Truly, I don't know. At Waltz Brothers, the architect did the building, but he didn't design the manufacturing floors, the layout of the machines and that. And so what you would do is go to the TMA, get knowledge of machine shops, and be an architect who specializes in designing machine shops. You can be an architect who specializes in designing hotels, or like I had a friend, I haven't seen him in a long time, but all he did was he was an interior designer for nightclubs. And he did some restaurants, but he focused on nightclubs. And so everything he did was nightclubs. And he just helped them, build new ones, design the interiors. That's what he focused on, creating unique interiors for nightclubs and redesigning nightclubs, refreshing nightclubs. But he focused on nightclubs. There's nightclubs in every country around the world. You could be a person who focuses on, be an architect who designs pubs, like Charlie's Ale House. The design for the interior, the architectural design for the back bar, it was made by these amazing woodworkers. It was awesome, and I worked with them. There's some things I needed in it, but they designed this beautiful back bar, and the architects, working with the entire. You can be an architect who designs pubs. So in the architectural field, the architects work with interior designers. Interior designers work with architects. So you have the structure of the building, architectural, and then you have the interior designer. So, and you could be in manufacturing, interior design for manufacturing floors, how to bring the right colors and help them with the manufacturing layouts and so on and so forth, and creating these efficiencies. But manufacturing needs to move to a new step of aesthetic beauty. They want to turn blue collar into a white collar atmosphere. Yeah, very clean, the colors, the air's clean, and so you can get top talent. So you can get top talent into these environments. And so they need to start changing the interior of manufacturing facilities, first of all, to be very employee friendly, meaning not putting them at health risks from different fumes and so on, but also the design. It can be aesthetically beautiful. Machines can be aesthetically beautiful. You can hire a designer to design the outside of a machine. We do it with cars, right? There's designers for cars, interior designers, exterior designers, and they design cars and try to make the interior and exterior aesthetically beautiful. What is a car? A machine. So why don't machine shops look at that as well? You want people not only functionality, but your machines like Haas and Mitsubishi Heavy Manufacturing, that they can design machines that are aesthetically beautiful as well, that people want to care for them. Aesthetic beauty drives people to take care of something. So if you, even military ships and that should have aesthetic beauty to the ship itself. I know it has other ones that are first, but still, you want people to be happy. I don't know if interior colors are the right colors for military ships. And that, in general, look at cruise ships. And they design them to be aesthetically beautiful. Military ships have the functionality, but the color patterns in that should be aesthetically pleasing to the people on the ship. Even the interior of a tank in that, it has the functionality, but people are going to be in the tank or they're going to be in a vehicle. And so creature comforts don't matter, even in the military. How you hold the gun, it has to be aesthetically correct to hold the gun. There's ergonomics about a gun and everything else, but also how it feels on you, the comfortability of the gun. If you're going to shoot a gun like an M16, a lot of times they got to understand that the kickback from, depending on the muzzle velocity and so on of the gun. So if you're trying to fire a weapon repeatedly in a firefight and you're holding that weapon, they have to understand how it affects the human body. And so if you're in a firefight, you got to be able to handle that weapon and hold that. So kickback does matter to the human body on how long. So they have to do things to design them to ergonomically not negatively affect the body if you shoot the weapon for a long period of time. And the weapon exterior can't get extremely hot in that and burn. So on and so forth. So there's this functionality or ergonomics, but also the gun should be fairly aesthetically pleasing in that way. So people want to take care of it, And so I think things need to move to more aesthetics, even semis like the trailers. there can be more things, since colors are cheap and all that now, you'd have the ability to do things they never could do before. So on the interior of a semi, you can make the thing functional, but also the interior can be highly aesthetically pleasing as well. Even the trailer, I'm talking inside the trailer or the cargo container and so on. People are working in those environments. So you can make the environment more aesthetically pleasing. So they need to understand that when they're dealing with things, like you're working in a bulldozer all day or you're working in a crane and so on and so forth, aesthetically pleasing, and then you got to think about functionality. You're up there and, emptying your bladder and so on and so forth. So you need to think about the crane operator and what he needs to eat and drink to be able to be in a situation, or like they said, 12-hour shifts when it comes to the boring machine, right? So you got to think about the dietary that's going into them, so they metabolize things fully and they don't produce a lot of waste product. So, the operator needs to run the machine for 12 hours. So constantly going to the bathroom, they can't shut down the site, right? So training dietary, not to negatively affect them, but to get the proper nutrients they need, but over a period of time where it gets fully metabolized and assimilated. So you're looking at things that don't create waste, that get fully assimilated and create very minimal waste product. Very minimal waste product. So the operator can be there for 12 hours and not have to go to the bathroom for 12 hours. Like a pilot and so on being in a plane. So their dietary habits, this is all part of the design and functionality of working in a manufacturing or working in an environment where you sometimes have to do these longer shifts that are prohibited, like a crane operator, from having to go, to go to the bathroom constantly. So you're way up there, and so you have to alleviate yourself, and then you have to have the right dietary function for a sedentary position, but it must keep you alert, and that's where colors of the monitors, like the blues and certain things that keep you alert on the lighting instruments and so on, that keep them alert. Even in driving semis and that, you're looking at that ambient light that's coming off in the cockpit, and it is a cockpit. I'm in a cockpit. The car, I'm driving the car, this is my cockpit. And they design things for functionality, cockpit design. So you want things to be able to be reached in that without causing distractions, like voice controls for the radio or other things that, like, hey, Alexa, I tell Alexa what I want. Music this, or go to 94.7 or so on. And that way I don't have to move my hands a lot from the steering wheel. And you could say, hey, Alexa, put on the turn signal, turn left. Hey, Alexa, put on the turn signal to turn right. Or you can build in the turn signal, instead of this bar, this thing, you can have buttons on the wheel. You press the button for the turn signal to turn left, and you press the button for the turn signal to turn right. The turn signal to turn right is on the right-hand side. The turn signal to turn left is on the left-hand side. And you just press a button. It's right on the wheel. So you can keep your hands on the wheel, right? That's the controls for the radios and that. They have cars that put them on the wheel and the volume controls. Well, how about the turn signals and the windshield wipers? Can't they be integrated? And, the driver commands and so on, like, setting adaptive cruise control or anything else. So the whole point is that cars need to get very cockpit friendly, and if you get very cockpit friendly, then you design the vehicle to keep the driver focused on the road. Truly. You design the vehicle to focus on the road. And it can have forward things where it monitors in front of you and says, obstruction spotted in the road, 100 feet, obstruction 50 feet, obstruction 25 feet. Like I had a cone in the middle of the road the other day. The vehicle could have spotted the obstruction, right? Shape recognition, so the vehicle knows where the ground is, and anything above the ground, it's a horizon like planes do. You have the horizon, while the horizon is the pavement. And anything above the horizon in front of you is an obstruction. And now with shape recognition, it can say obstructions to the right, barricades. Shape recognition knows these are barricades. Here is the wall, and now it's above the horizon, and it knows that here you have the wall to the right. And so with this new system, integrating cameras, thermal imaging, and that can work in all, it can keep you from impacting the wall. Even if you want to go right, you can't go right because there's no room. So I had to make a decision when I was going down at 15 and a half, going down the entrance ramp to the Edens Expressway, which is 94. And the decision was, the lady ran the stop sign. Now, I had a decision as I was going, and I hit the brakes, but I had a decision. There was a wall to the right of me that I could have hit the car into. But the wall has no give, so that means I would have received full impact on the driver's side. So I have my mother next to me, and then I see, truly all this is visually going in very quickly, but I see two old ladies. I see where the car is, and I can't go to the right behind it. So I made the decision to go to the left. And I hit the car on an angle to the left, angle impact on the right-hand side, which was my mother's side, but up on the front light. And so when I hit it on the angle, the car got pushed to the left. That way, the energy, when I hit it, was projected towards me, not projected towards my mother because of the angle I hit it on. I directed the energy, and truly, this is my thinking. As the brakes are applied and I'm sliding towards the car, I had to make a decision of where I'm going to hit this vehicle. And it happens that fast, but I hit it on the front left with my front right. On the angle, it pushed my car a little bit to the left. My mom was perfectly fine. She had her seatbelt on, and she slapped me before we hit the car. She called me a son of a bitch. So it's funny because we had this much time as we're sliding into the car. The brakes, the car. My mother looked at me and said, "Michael, you son of a bitch," and she slapped me across the face. She slapped me. She looked at me and called me a son of a bitch and slapped me. I didn't blow the stop sign. The two old ladies, and they were like 80s, 90s, they blew the stop sign. But the injustices that happened to me in my life, because other people don't do what they should do, and they torment me with their thing. And I'm 15 and a half. I was on a learner's permit. I have to drive with my mother's on a learner's permit. But I got slapped in the face, called the son of a bitch, and then we hit the car. It was that quick. "Michael, you son of a," and slapped me right across the face. And I'm trying to make maneuvers to make sure the impact is correct. And she slapped me across the face, and I didn't pay attention to it. And then I didn't say a word to her. When we hit the car, I looked at my mother. She was okay. Checked. And I jumped out of the car, ran up, and I checked on the two old ladies in the car. And I checked on them both, driver and passenger. They were both 80 or 90 years old. I think 80 something. They shouldn't have been driving. They blatantly blew the stop sign. We were coming. They didn't really see us. Now, the car was gray or silver, a light silver or darker gray. You would say a darker silver to gray. And it was the middle of the day, clear, no, nice and bright, sunny day, perfect weather conditions. It was a summer day. But still, they ran the stop sign, didn't notice me, and maybe didn't notice the stop sign. But my mother hit me, then I have to go out and check on them. And then I get home, and I tell my sister the story, and my mother calls me a liar in front of my sister and says she never said I was a son of a bitch and never slapped me. She told my sister that it never happened and that I'm lying. Now I'm 15 and a half. And here's my mother who actually hit me and said that. And here she's lying to my sister about her actions. Now she's supposed to be my role model, right? But I got punished from her before I hit, and then I felt the impact too. And I still have to get out and care for everybody. But these are things that God sees happen in my life that people do to me. I did nothing wrong. I was not responsible for the situation. I was not speeding. I was doing nothing wrong. And I did everything to lessen the negativity. And that's what God does when they're watching Hannibal. They don't understand. God does everything to lessen man's negativity. So things do happen, and it's sad that certain people pass, but God does everything to try to steer mankind in the right direction. Mankind, as he found out by letting Satan with Adam and Eve, that mankind, his design had a propensity towards evil, which Satan did. And so God is trying to constantly redirect mankind away from this nature. And so if you say if people are born good, it is not true. And people are born with this natural instinct of drawn towards negativity, like Satan was. He had all the glory of God. He had everything. He was God's most beloved, right? He had everything. He was on the right-hand side of the God. He shined in the greatest light of God. And in turn, that wasn't enough, and he stabbed God in the back. So God is constantly trying to evolve and fix the problem. And so he's trying to redirect constantly. And as I said, what people did to me, God changed things. And he's adapted, and I said this in 2006 as well, he's adapted since Jen abandoned me and things changed. Now the direction, and he was planned. Now, plan B comes into place. He didn't want plan A to end, but plan A ended. Now plan B comes in place. And so I sped up things and was day and night trying to solve every problem in the world. Truly. I'm trying to figure out how I can communicate, translate to people in other languages, and that we're making Chicago an international city, a business hub, giving capabilities around me. Building a city with massive capabilities around me. And that's what I was designing. A city that had all the capabilities that I needed. Not that they need it, not that they want it, but what I want it. And so I started writing and so on and so forth, talking about building the educational foundation and building the city and how to deal with tourism and how to create international communications and hotels and that, fire safety and everything to protect life. And so I just sped it up. I was already doing it, but since now I wasn't in that environment, things just sped up. So I used my time I had to even speed up my natural tendencies, and so God changed. But then he changed again in 2015, that these negativities were going to be put on me again substantially, and so he wanted to address those situations, and through that there was things that I was privy to and that he made adjustments and changes. So he already has the contingencies, and no matter what you do, it's all God's plan. So when man makes plans, God laughs because he already knows every road, everything that every tendency you have. And he's trying to go down a certain path, and so he constantly tries to redirect you. But he had to learn from Satan, and then he had to test Adam and Eve, and they had this propensity, and so he's been trying to redirect mankind. And sometimes it caused wiping out and reinventing. But he's trying to get mankind to move mainly in this direction of justice and righteousness. He wants things to be designed where people are found guilty for their misdeeds, and the people that suffer are taken care of for the negative actions against them. And if mankind can't do that, and they constantly go back to the disciples or Moses or others before, and you constantly punish and condemn and so on, then there is no righteousness. Mankind is now just one big predator. And every God's chosen become their prey. And this is shown through the disciples, through Christ. God's anointed and everything becomes mankind's prey in their sin. And so they destroy and hurt and deprive and lie and cheat to God's chosen. And it's all done because they think they're making things better. But they're not making things better. They're teaching people to be the Antichrist. They're making the genetics even worse. Because they're teaching that righteous people should not triumph, unrighteous people should triumph. And so any deception, any lies, deceits, any kind of depriving, suppressing, anything is now justified in that action, so mankind can get what it wants. But it's teaching everybody that there is no wrong to any evil as long as that evil ends up in getting you what you want. So, as in Hannibal, there is no wrong to any of his evil, as he talks through the TV show, as long as it ends up getting him what he wants. So everything you do is designed so you get what you want, but the wrongness is that you slaughter people in doing so. So the people that rise to the top aren't the people that are supposed to be there, and the people at the bottom are the people that should be at the top. Hence, the meek will inherit the earth. The people that truly should be at the top are at the bottom, and they're the meek. The people at the top are not the people it should be at the top, and those are the mighty. So the meek will inherit the earth, the righteous man will inherit the earth, and as it says in Revelations, and all the unrighteous will be put to waste because they have things they don't deserve. It is not from their own calling. It is not from theirs. That's why the United States was so strong on intellectual properties. What is yours is yours. What is mine, and the two shall never meet. Because you're not inheritance. I get to pick who the inheritance goes to. You can't determine who the inheritance goes through. So in financial planning, you pick your heirs, who the inheritance goes to. And if you're denied, so be it. Then do your own things and create your own legacy. But to steal somebody else's, like the movie Pain and Gain, what did they do? These two, one of them an ex-con, maybe both of them ex-cons, but they decided that they wanted the wealth, they wanted the house, they wanted the car, they wanted the business. And so what did they do to get it? And it's a true story. And they tortured and killed these people. And then you see in the movie they're doing this community watch and that. Well, yeah, that's a good thing. But the reason they're doing it is so they're alerted to anything going on in the neighborhood that might be related to taking them down. So the community watch was initiated so they can get information. Didn't you see this in rapist who captured and kidnapped and repeatedly raped the 3 women in Cleveland? He was a musician, and he played at these fundraisers for each of the girls who were missing. And the reason he did this, so he could be abreast of everything that was going on with the search for the girls. So evil people move in the mix so they can get in the know. Just like the serial killer who was caught in California, who was an ex-cop. And that's the reason he stopped. And he stopped. Once he retired from the police force, he never killed again. And the reason he never killed again, because he wasn't in the know. So he knew what's going on, so he could reposition his pieces. He wasn't steering the investigations, but he was part in the investigations. And so he could steer himself away from, reposition his pieces to make sure that he was never caught. And once he retired from the police force, he stopped killing. And his last killing was decades ago, but the DNA matched, and somehow they came up with him and they busted him. And he's about 70, 80 years old in California for these long murders a long time ago. But he stopped killing when he couldn't steer or be part of the investigation. So the guy in Cleveland put himself into the mix. And so you don't think serial killers read the press and read the information going into the paper? And you don't think they're trying to stay abreast of what's going on? They read the headlines like everybody else. They want to stay abreast of what's going on so they don't get caught. So anything going out in the media, they're taking in as information, just like terrorist organizations. They want to know what's going on with certain actions and so on so they can stay abreast. And it would behoove me, as you know, ISIS had a whole guy who was running their internet program that we ended up killing. But staying abreast of what the U.S. government is doing and how people are feeling and what's the sentiment. The U.S. is repositioning carriers here and repositioning carriers there. Now, one way the information is good to discourage, but another way they have a tactical response to the repositioning of these military assets. So it's interesting, like Governor Stevens, when he was hit the embassy where he was staying and so on, they probably knew how many people were guarding it, and the response team, they struck it and they knew it was night over here. I think it was night over here when they struck over there and Ambassador Stevens, so they knew that the people responsible for making the decisions were asleep. So just like when we did the invasion, supposedly in World War II, Hitler was asleep. And we got a break because he took sleeping pills, he was asleep, and they couldn't get his permission to release the Panther units. Now they make it out, but he was asleep. And we struck with him in bed. But that was on purpose. So at the dawn hours, all them sleeping, all the units are sleeping, and that's when we let the guns loose, and that's when the invasion started. But that's because we started at the break of dawn or just before the break of dawn, so their troops would be asleep. So when you're doing manpower, like for the police and that, don't you have to break it up and then make sure that you have proper manpower in the evening, during the day, or with military? So many units are awake, so many units being asleep, because you can't get caught with your pants down. But most military units, they're asleep at night, and there's a skeleton crew on during the evening or at night. And so it's the best time to strike. So that's what we did when we struck for D-Day. So we caught them with their pants down because all the troops were sleeping. And so but they don't bring that up on the invasion. Talk about that. Just before daybreak, they started things, and the point was to catch them all sleeping. So, just like the Japanese when they did Pearl Harbor, the same thing. You know, and they want to catch you at the cover of night, so the planes are taking off, and just before sunup. So when the sun comes up, they're already over Hawaii. They struck very early in the morning, but they were launching all their planes basically in late morning where there was minimal to no sun. So they were launching them at night. And that was the point, so they wouldn't be detected, and they would be right on top of the island with sunrise. And that's what happened. And they caught everybody sleeping with their pants down. So the whole point is that in the evening and the day, and you're doing these things, people are trying to catch you unprepared. Just like the Tet Offensive, they struck during a holiday. And just like in North Korea, the Chinese did it on Christmas Eve. Truly, Christmas Eve, when the troops would be skeleton and so on and so forth, and celebrating Christmas. And so they struck on Christmas Eve. So all these things are picked out when they're the weakest. And like at the airport, the 9/11, they got on the flights, but they did it in the morning when the people are overwhelmed. With 9/11, they did it with security when the passengers were at its greatest level. They picked all the early morning flights when the airports would be filled with people. And what does that do? It puts pressure on security. And they picked that time because they knew that because of the weight of the plane, the passengers would be on the plane and baggage and everything else, the plane would be full of fuel as well. Because if you don't have many passengers and you don't have much baggage, you're not putting much fuel in the plane. So they needed to get the planes full of fuel. So they needed to have the planes packed full of passengers, right? Baggage and passengers. So they put the most fuel in because it's going to burn the most fuel because it's at its heaviest weight. And they also knew that because what? The terminals were going to be the busiest. So they're less likely to catch you when they're the busiest, when you don't stand out in a crowd. So you mix in with everybody else. And maybe they picked the airport with the greatest amount of Arab population. Maybe they picked D.C. and these airports because these airports have the greatest amount of Arabs. And so the airport would be filled with many Arabs taking flights. And so they would just be one of the many Arabs, right? They get lost in the flock. So if there's a lot of airports, so the airports might have been chosen because of the amount of Arabs that take flights out of that airport. And think about it. Those airport locations have lots and lots of Arabs that go to the airport and take flights. And so they would be one of the many. And because it's racism, the profile, they would be discouraged to looking closely at any Arab, right? And now you're also under pressure because if you're an Arab and you're in an airport full of people and they do anything to you, those people know now they have tons of witnesses around them, that if they do anything wrong, everybody can see. And so they're also not going to be, very diligent. They're going to be very soft on minorities, right? Like Arabs in that. They're not. That's why we use black security at Excalibur. Because what could they say? Black guy to a black guy, and they frisk the hell out of the males and females, going through the purse and everything else. Because what could they say? And some females say, hey, man, that's to the security, do you really need to go through? And he's like, yeah, open the purse or you're not going in. And I'm going through your purse or you're not going in. But she couldn't say what she could say to a white person. You're a racist. And then the whole crowd looks and then the person feels, I'm a racist. I'm a racist. I can't. Your actions are racist. And so do you think that airport security didn't know that when they're dealing with all these people at rush hour for the airport and there's lots of other Muslims around? And what do? They stand up and they would stand up like the blacks do, stand up, you're a racist person, you're a racist, like they did outside the bar with me. They came out and the most racist things ever. I searched black and African American and I was trying to find cures for these situations. But again, you don't think they know that? And I've talked to officers. And they didn't go in and they stayed back because they were afraid if they went in and pulled over a car with black people in it, and gun violence went way up. And the police were afraid to even interact because they could be called racist. So all the racist people are the people that make the statements that it's racist. But they don't look into their actions that, black people from a white people, they all look the same. So, yeah, it's harder for to distinguish. It's easier. Like I have Asian friends. It's easier for them to distinguish amongst other Asians. I ask them about white people. It's more difficult for them looking at white people to distinguish as readily. They still can because white people have blonde hair, blue eyes. We have all the eye colors. We have all the hair colors and so on. So white people are on the whole spectrum, except for skin color. We, lighter to darker white people. You say olive, like Sicilians. So there is a spectrum. But again, it's a little bit more difficult to distinguish for them. So, but because we have all these different eye colors and skin tone, but it's a little bit easier for them than with them. They have black or brown eyes, which are very similar. They have dark hair. They have, and so on. Their features and so on don't differ that greatly. And then if you get a black person at night, or any minority at night, because of darker skin, it's harder to see, less reflection. And so it's harder to identify them. But they want to say that it is untrue. And this has been going on forever because no one understands this inability to recognize. You recognize people of your tribe. Number one, first and foremost, it's in your genetics. So you identify with people of your tribe fastest. So, and you can go and read the research in that. So they keep on wanting to move to these things called racism, and they're not racism. People have an inherent DNA dislike for people. There is this genetic built in because of histories between people. Some people's chemistry, and it is in their genetics, rub other people naturally wrong because they used to be, how do you say, rivals. So that lineage is in you, and some people rub other people wrong, and a lot of times it deals with lineage. You were part of a rival tribe, and so you don't get along. Your genetics, you smell them, they smell you, and hence you naturally have this, how do you say, irritant from them. And so you got to understand this, and that's why I like the police officer from Milwaukee, the black guy. He's a Republican, but he said all this crap that black people were talking was crap, that these officers were trying to do their job and so on and so forth. And that now the one thing with Dahmer, identifying missing people, shouldn't it be easier to identify in the black community? And when you're looking for these people, they can see their people easier. They can identify their people